up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for October 11th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Feel Good Friday edition of the podcast. It'd be a lot more feel-gooder, yes, I know, if we were preparing for Game 5 tonight. But here we are. But let's get into that Phillies game. And had some time to reflect, think about some things, and even more disappointed. And I guess we'll start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, which was more disappointing, the 2023 Eagles or the 2024 Phillies? 65% of you said the Eagles of 2023 were more disappointing. Thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. We will have another one later in the show, but respectfully, you're wrong. 65% of you are 100% wrong. And here's why. And I think what a lot of people are forgetting is just more of the expectations versus reality. I think the two teams are the whole course of their seasons are very, very similar. But I think the expectations for the Phillies were so much higher than the Eagles because, hear me out here, the Eagles were 10-1. I don't think there's anybody, if you really stop and think back, and you can go back through some of the archives of this podcast, I said it all the time, they did not play their best. And I think it's a fair thing to say, maybe that's just who they were. They were winning a lot with smoke and mirrors from day one out in New England. And I remember just saying on this podcast, they're going to turn it on. They're going to put it together. They're winning despite not playing their best game. That best game just never came. I think that was more who they were. I think, yes, we were all ecstatic and excited that they were 10-1, but they were never a 10-1 team. The Phillies, on the other hand, they came into this season with, I think, higher expectations than what the 2023 Eagles did. And I know both teams came in with high expectations. But the Phillies were a World Series or bust team. And they played at a 70% clip for the first 2 months of the season. Yes, that is not sustainable. But I think even through their troubles, through the summer with the struggles, the slump, and everything, I think coming into it, we were just like, okay, we got the bye. They'll be fine. This will be a different team. They'll be fine. And throw in the fact that they lost to the Mets. That's why this is so disappointing. I think I was disappointed in 2022, but it was sort of like a neat sort of, hey, they put it together unexpectedly, maybe a year or so earlier than what any of us thought. 2023 was disappointing, but it was sort of you knew what the flaws of this team were. And you're like, okay, there was the injuries with Bryce, and you kind of had, all right, they'll be back. The trajectory now is to get back and win it. And the way they came out, I think that's what it is. Like, the expectations were so high for this team. That's why it's the Phillies of 2024 is more disappointing than the Eagles, because if we're really honest and truthful with ourselves, nobody thought the Eagles last year, even at 10-1, were going to go to the Super Bowl. I don't think any of us expected, and I heard a lot of people talk yesterday about the historic collapse. And yes, it was a historic collapse, but I don't think any of us throughout that 10-1 start were like, this is a Super Bowl team. I said it many times. They have not played their best. They need to clean it up. They need to do this. They need to do that. And they just never did. Where this team, the Phillies, a lot of time throughout the season, even when they kind of came back down to earth, really played like a World Series team. So that's why it's more of the expectations are more important here than the reality. Because the reality is both teams lost, both teams collapsed for the most part. But the reality of it is that Eagles team was never going to be a Super Bowl team last year. And I don't care what anyone says, you're lying if you think you thought that team at 10-1 was going to the Super Bowl. Because we all said it, we all saw it, we knew what was going on with that team. And it was just a matter of time before it caught up with them. And I didn't expect the way it did. But that's why this team is the most disappointing team, I feel, in the past, other than maybe some Sixers teams. This is the most disappointing finish to a season that I've had in a while. I mean, it's the Super Bowl. I didn't really, I mean, I was disappointed, but I was more disappointed on Wednesday night than what I was at the Super Bowl. It's just this team. I maybe it's me. I drank the Kool-Aid, but I personally, like I said, this was way worse than the 2023 Eagles because I think we saw what was going to happen to that Eagles team. Maybe not to the extent it did, but I mean, you could also make the argument, I know, because I've heard people say it, that you knew what was going to happen to this Phillies team. But I mean, didn't see this coming. But to put it in perspective, they peaked too soon. And I talked about this yesterday, but baseball and hockey are two of those sports where, and I mean, we've seen it sometimes in the NFL, but for the most part, the better teams typically are the ones in the end in the conference championship games. Every now and then you have Eli Manning and the Giants going on a run like that. But they just peaked too soon. And like I said, Major League Baseball, you have to get hot at the right time. We saw it with the Phillies in 22. We saw it in 23. And they just were not peaking. Where the Mets were firing on all cylinders, they had confidence. And for whatever reason, the Phillies just didn't have the confidence, or maybe they were too confident and thought they were just going to roll. But it leaves us with a lot of questions that we'll kind of focus on periodically throughout the offseason, like the young guys, who's ready to step up? Aiden Miller, Justin Crawford, will Andrew Painter be back? How long before Mick Abel? What do you do with Trey Turner? I mean, he had an okay season, but certainly not a $300 million season. How much is John Middleton willing to spend and go over that luxury tax threshold? It's just a lot of questions, but that is sort of my day after rant. And I think it's more disappointing than anything. I was talking to my one buddy through text message. He said he hasn't been this despondent about a Phillies team in a long time. And it's the truth. It's just, we put so much effort and energy into rooting for this team and believing that this was the year they were going to win the World Series. To have it end like that, and on top of that, have an end to the Mets, that's why this is more disappointing. But we'll have more as the offseason progresses. Not ready yet because who knows what's going to happen. The season isn't even over, but there certainly are a lot of questions. Bohm, what do you do with him? And the issue is they don't have a ton of moves that they can make because of the contracts they're in. And I mean, they're going to be okay. They're going to be a contender again next year, at least for a playoff spot due to their pitching staff. But the bullpen, as good as it was in the first half, that's how bad it was down the stretch and into the postseason. So lots of questions that Dave Dombrowski needs to address and answer. Is it fixable? Yeah. Is it going to be easy? No. But that's why you have the resume you do and you get paid the money you do. So as we get into the offseason and start looking ahead, we'll kind of look at those questions and really explore what's left for the Phillies. But right now, I'm just too pissed off about what happened and how it played out. And on to the next season. It's just the never-ending cycle. And as my uncle said, you just got to root for them and hope for the best. All right, some quick housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mott at Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mott, and spread the word. I've been saying this, but it's the truth. Like our listenership and viewership has been growing by leaps and bounds over the past couple months, and it's a testament to you. So if you're enjoying it, chances are you have somebody in your circle that's going to enjoy it too. Let them know, and then just kind of continue down the road that way. If you need information on the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, that information is in the description. Information on the induction class, the inductees, huge class this year, headlined by Chase Utley, Ryan Howard, and Jameer Nelson. Angelo Cataldi's in there, Rod Brindamore. So a huge Paul Westhead. So a huge Hall of Fame class. So we will get started later in this month on our Hall of Fame spotlight. But check it out. Tickets are still available. All the information you need is in that link. And then be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences. Listen to the baseball podcast on my walk this morning. They were listening, or they were recording during the Game 4. But it was a very entertaining show, despite the fact I wanted to reach through my phone and strangle Mike. But that's okay. One of my best friends, but he is a Mets fan. But that's available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Another good episode for football this week as well. And then basketball should be kicking off soon for them. Go to Philly Goat. Get ready for Eagle season. It's so weird that the bye was so early. The second half of Eagle season, they got you covered with all your Eagles needs. Get flyered up, get sixered up. All of those sports are getting ready to kick off. And Philly Goat has you covered. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery for 10%. And if you want to stash away some Red October stuff, they have you covered there as well. All right, looking at the Eagles. Looks like they're going to be very, very healthy heading into this game against Cleveland. Everybody, with the exception of Nakobe Dean, was a full participant in practice. Even Nakobe said he'll be ready to go, though. Sidney Brown was a full participant. Still have not heard. I'm sure we'll get more clarity on whether or not he'll be activated today when they do their walkthrough. I'm excited about it. I think him being back is going to help the secondary out. You get Avonte Maddox out of there and let this young secondary cook. I think they're going to be, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I'll do this on Sunday, but I think that young secondary is going to be a key to this game. And Cooper DeJean might get the start. Sidney Brown might be playing. Quinyon Mitchell has been outstanding. So let these young guys cook and see what they got. Slay is Slay. Won't get into that, but we'll have more on the injury updates tomorrow. A.J. Brown is going to speak to the media today, so anxious to see what he says. And then on the other side of the ball, the Browns have a ton of injuries. They had a lot of guys who are limited in practice, both offensively and defensively, especially their offensive line. So that, again, is something we're going to monitor to see who's in, who's out for the Browns. Nick Chubb was limited coming off of the knee injury. No word on, this is his second week, so I don't know if he's going to go this week or next week. It will change the outlook of this game slightly, but I don't think to the point where we're going to be like, oh my God, the Eagles are going to lose to this team. The line is up to 9.5. Getting a good read on this, and like I said, I'll have more on this on Sunday when we go over our keys to the game and give our prediction, but looking like they're going to be healthy, which bodes well. Maybe an early bye was what this team needed, and they can put it together after the bye. We've seen crazier things. So, Sixers are out in Minnesota tonight. They're not on TV from what I could see, but open up their NBA portion of their preseason schedule in Minnesota. Joe hasn't scrimmaged yet. He had a scheduled meeting about his knee yesterday. Hopefully we'll get more updates on that. I don't think it's anything necessarily to worry about because he played in the Olympics and played well. Probably just making sure before they start ramping him up that everything is good to go. But hopefully we get an update on that today. Flyers drop the puck tonight for real out in Vancouver tonight at 10. Way past my bedtime, but getting excited for that. And as promised, I'll be honest, I don't know a ton of hockey. I've been really working hard to get up my game by following the other teams and everything. But I do have some Flyers preview. And last year, 88 points. They had 75 points the year before. And last year was disappointing because they were in the playoffs for the most part the entire season until the last, I think it was 7 games or whatever it was. But this is a key year for John Tortorella. And I saw this stat a couple different places. There was an article in the Inquirer about it. And at his previous 2 stops, year 3, the teams have made a huge leap. So when he was at Tampa Bay, they won the Stanley Cup in John Tortorella's 3rd year, and they really took a huge leap. When he was in Columbus, he led them to their first ever playoff series win in franchise history. So year 3 is key for Tortorella. I guess it takes him 3 years to really get his system in, get his players. Now, this is more of a rebuilding project from a Flyers standpoint, but they were on the brink last year, and I think that the stats don't lie. The fact that his teams take that leap in the 3rd year, there's a ton of potential for this team in the future, but I think for this year, obviously the big story all year is going to be Mishkov Mania. I think we're going to see, and I've been watching highlights and really doing research on this. This dude is going to be a game changer, and the fact that he's 2 years earlier than what the Flyers anticipated, I think it's going to be fun. And I'm thinking like, and I know this is lofty and maybe premature, and this is what we do in Philly, but I'm thinking like Eric Lindros's level of difference maker for this guy on this team. He certainly is going to open everything up for everybody else, so the offense should be more exciting. Some of the passes he was making in preseason were just ridiculous. I watched some of his highlights in Russia. This dude is the real deal. And then Jet Luchenko, the 18-year-old rookie they drafted this year in the first round, has really impressed. Nobody really expected him to make the team. So you throw him out there, and I don't know the line configurations. I'm excited to see that tonight. But if you got Luchenko and Mishkov on the same line, that could be maybe not Legion of Doom because of their size and everything, but that could be a fun line moving forward for this season with this team. But Danny Briere has just had nothing but high praise for Jet Luchenko and how much he's impressed them throughout the preseason. It looks like the Flyers, for the first time in a while, are set at goalie. Sam Ersson and I can never say his name the right way, Fedotov. And I think that is going to be key. That was one of the good things that they had last year. Obviously, when Carter Hart was had to go away for just being a scumbag, Ersson really stepped up, and then Fedotov late in the season, they unexpectedly got him too. So a lot of good fortune in the past couple of years when it comes to getting players from Russia for the Flyers. Defensively, I think I'm excited for this. Jamie Drysdale is healthy. You got Travis Sanheim and Cam York. They're going to be the key, I think, because I think this team is going to score some goals and be exciting. But can they stop the opponents? They should be improved on defense from where they were last year. But I think the key to this season is going to be with the power play and the penalty kill. Penalty kill was top 5 last season. They were able to kill off penalties. And I mean, if you ever watched hockey, you know that's key. When you get the man advantage and go down to man disadvantage and you're able to stop a team, like that's huge. However, on the other side, they were dead last in the NHL in power play. They need to step up in that area. I'm thinking that with Luchenko, the excitement that he brings, and then Mishkov obviously just being a stud, they should not be less in power play. And I think if they can get up into the middle of the pack in power play, they should be way more improved than what they were last year. So what's the prediction for this team? Can they make the playoffs? I mean, they were in it till the end last year, and I think it was like the last 7 games they lost, and even it took down. I think it was like they were high enough up that I think it took till like the second to last day of the season for them to be officially eliminated. And even on the last day, they had chances if things broke this way or broke that way. It's going to be tough, obviously, for this team to make the playoff, but they certainly will be in the hunt. I think they get off to a slower start. I think going out and opening with 4 games on the West Coast, maybe we'll do the opposite of what happened last year. They got off to the hot start and fell off. Maybe they get off to a slower start. Maybe it takes them some time to get to gel for John Tortorella to get the lines right. I think one of the goalies needs to step up. I don't think it's sustainable necessarily for them to go in. Maybe he rides the hot hand. I don't know. But I think one of these guys needs to emerge as the alpha. And I think both of them have the potential to do it. So it's just a matter. So I think in the early goings, you're going to see a lot of fluidity with both the lines and the goalie until they kind of get their flow. So what's the prediction? I think they hit 90 points. They had 88 last year and lost their last 7 games. They were right there in the thick of things. So I definitely think they get 90 points, and I think they sneak into the playoffs with 90 points. I think you base it on John Tortorella's track record. I think they're trending in the right direction. I think that it's going to be an exciting team moving forward. And in the NHL, there's always that one team that comes out of nowhere and surprises. And why can't it be the Flyers? It definitely, I'm not saying they're going to win a playoff series, but I think they're going to be a tough out no matter what seed they get. But I'm very high on the Flyers. I think they're going to improve based on where they put it this way. They were 88 points last year without Mishkov and Luchenko. And now you got Mishkov and Luchenko. Yes, there's going to be some growing pains there, but they're a better team, I feel, going into this season than they were last year. So there's no reason to think that they will not improve on their 88 points. Make the playoffs. I think they sneak in, and I think they surprise a lot of people this year. Take that for what you will. I'm sure you're going to say, what do you know about hockey? Well, tell me where I'm wrong. 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. But what are your Flyers predictions? Do you think they make the playoffs? Let me know. Tell me how much I suck at hockey. All of that. But that is the Back to the Future voice and text line. Still want to vent about the Phils? That's fair game too. I'm telling you, this is a Phillies support group. Everybody is welcome. But I've been telling you about the bet. So hockey betting is a lot different than any of the other sports simply because the games aren't as high scoring and it's a lot of 1.5 puck lines and things like that. So how can we keep invested in the Flyers throughout the whole season? Well, I mean, they had 88 points last year. Right now, DraftKings has the Flyers total points for the season over under 88.5. We're going to hammer the over here. Give us something to root for. I think we might have to sweat it out possibly later in the season, but I think they get to 90 points. So that is the Flyers bet I made for the season. DraftKings, it was reasonably priced too. I think it was at minus 115. So we're going Flyers team total points over 88.5 this year. If you want to get crazy, I think you can make to make the playoffs and things like that. But it's going to be close, but this is 100% doable. And that is our bet. So that way we'll kind of keep track of this. I think they go over 88.5. I think they can get to 90, 91, 92 based on just John Tortorella year 3. The fact that I feel the team is better. They don't have the distraction of Carter Hart. And they should have gotten over 90 points last year. So over 88.5 points. That's our official Flyer season bet. Give us something to look forward to and kind of root for all year. But the question of the day, do you think the Flyers make the playoffs? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off of your chest. All right, today. This is one of those ones of why I love this podcast. It's kind of, I'm still a history teacher at heart. So this is one of those ones that's going to be a little educational as well as entertaining. But today we're going to go back to 1959. And on this day in 1959, the Eagles beat the Steelers 28-24 at Franklin Field. In attendance at that game was Bert Bell, who was the co-founder of the Eagles, was once an owner of the Steelers, former, or I guess at the time he was the NFL commissioner. Unfortunately, Bert Bell had a heart attack in the stands in the fourth quarter. He passed away the next day, but he is Philadelphia certainly, but NFL royalty and Philadelphia football royalty as well. He was an assistant coach at Penn and Temple, played quarterback at Penn. He was a World War I vet. He was a former head coach of the Eagles. Obviously, there are no Eagles without Bert Bell as one of the co-founders. He was a huge proponent as the owner of the Eagles for the college draft, and his plan is still in place today where the teams with the worst record get the first pick, and basically to allow the teams that maybe finish down in the standings to actually have a legitimate shot to turn things around. So that was Burt Bell back in the 30s who came up with that idea. When he became the commissioner, he was the second commissioner of the NFL. He passed, it was a lot of shadiness going on, and he passed some anti-gambling policies to make it illegal and tougher for games to be fixed and things like that. He oversaw the merger with the All-American Football Conference to help make the NFL bigger and strengthen it. And he was just a huge proponent of spreading the game and growing the game. He was big once the TV started to become big. He tailored the rules of the NFL to make it more enjoyable and better for TV when it came to timeouts and things like that. He's the guy that was like, all right, we need to grow this game on TV. However, we don't want people to not go to the game. So he was responsible for the blackout rules where if a team does not sell out, the game will not be shown within I think it's 75 or 90 mile radius of the stadium. But again, help just grow the popularity of the game. For better or for worse, he was the one responsible for the Pro Bowl. Also was interesting where you notice like the NFL uses the flex scheduling and things like that. Well, he was big on, even back then, a lot of the better teams wanted to play cupcakes early in the season while the weather was nice so they could ensure that people would come and they wanted to see the team win, so it would help out gate revenue. And he was like, what if we had the good teams play each other early in the season, the bad teams play each other, so then the standings are a little bit more even at the end of the season. So he was very strategic with the scheduling, used the standings from the previous year as we do now to help create the schedule for the following season. He was one of the first to really recognize and attempt to get the NFL's Player Association to be recognized. The owners obviously didn't want that, so there was some compromises, but he helped grow that to where there is a players union. But for me, most importantly, he started the end of segregation in the NFL. He approved the Rams to move to LA under the condition they signed Kenny Washington. And at that point, he was like, there was an unwritten agreement between the NFL owners that they would not sign black players. And he was like, no. If you can move to LA, but you have to sign black players. And eventually it was the beginning of the end of segregation. So he was well ahead of his time. But unfortunately, on this day in 1959, Burt Bell passed away at Franklin Field. Well, he had a heart attack at Franklin Field, passed away the next day. Ironically enough, he was the founder of the Eagles, one-time owner of the Steelers, and he died or had his heart attack at a game in Philadelphia where he founded the Eagles and where he was from against the Steelers, who his two teams he got to see, and that was the end of Burt Bell. But football royalty, Philadelphia royalty, and quite honestly, if you're watching the Eagles on Sunday, you're not doing that without Burt Bell. So Burt Bell passed away on this day in 1959 in a game in which the Eagles beat the Steelers 28-24. All right, finally today, our Red October, great game in Phillies postseason history. Not going to go back far, and just a sign and a reminder of what this team could have done. Game 5 of the 2022 NLCS. It was Zach Wheeler versus Yu Darvish. Phillies led the series 3-1. It was a rainy, chilly day in Philly. Rhys Hoskins led off the bottom of the third with a 2-run homer. Padres got one back in the top of the fourth. Then they scored 2 in the top of the seventh, so it was 3-2 heading into the bottom of the eighth. But it was touch and go with the bullpen, and I mean, I guess some things never change. But if you remember, it was dicey with the bullpen there in the 7th and 8th inning. But eventually, the Phillies got out of it unscathed and went into the bottom of the 8th, down 3-2. JT led off the 8th with a single, and then Bryce Harper hit a 2-run shot, which was known as Bedlam at the Bank, to put the Phillies up 4-3. Top of the ninth, David Robinson got in a little bit of trouble, and then Ranger Suarez came in and saved the game as the Phillies win 4-3, win the series 4-1, and go back to the World Series for the first time since 2009. The good old days. But we all know how that played out. It was a sign of things to come for this team. But our Red October, great game in Phillies postseason history. Game 5 of the 2022 NLCS. And it's a reminder of what could have been if the team did not disappoint the way they did. On this day in 1959, Eagles beat the Steelers 28-24. In attendance was NFL Commissioner Burt Bell, who's co-founder of the Eagles and one-time owner of the Steelers. Unfortunately, he had a heart attack and passed away the next day. Again, the irony that it was at an Eagles-Steelers game is just, it's thick. Let me know your thoughts on the Flyers. Will they make the playoffs? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Our bet, take the over, 88.5 points. It'll give us something to root for throughout the year with the Flyers as we look to make their triumphant return to the playoffs, which I think it would be the first time since the COVID bubble that they would be back in the playoffs. I think it's been since COVID where they surprisingly got like the top seed when they resumed play and did the quick round robin. But anyway, the Flyers kick it off tonight out in Vancouver. Will not be watching because 10 o'clock is way past my bedtime. We'll have more on the Eagles-Browns injury updates as they come out tomorrow. No Phillies game tonight. Disappointing, but it's still Friday. It's a feel-good Friday. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for October 11th, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Friday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.